Hello, my name is Lachlan, and I'm the host and creator of Mindclickers. I am a sport and exercise science student with a passion for esports, athlete wellbeing, and performance. I got into esports quite a long time ago in high school, where I competed in a couple of online tournaments through Cybergamer, achieved high masters in StarCraft, and have been a motivated Counterstrike player ever since. Mindclickers is a show where I chat with professional esports athletes in an array of games from League of Legends, Counterstrike, Valorant and StarCraft. In the following episode, I will be talking with Julian Joachim, who has been competing for 9 years in karate and has had the opportunity to represent himself in the national division. Alongside this, he is a seasoned League of Legends solo queue player and also has reached Grandmaster in StarCraft 2. Together, we talk about physical activity and the importance it has on health and also game performance. Listen to him conquer fear, overcome anxiety, and persevere in unwinnable situations. Together, we discuss the importance of movement, whilst also critically analysing a research paper. Finally, we discuss the importance of visualisation and how this can impact our performance. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy. Alrighty, thank you everyone for joining me on episode 2 of Mindclickers, where it's time to click both heads in 2020. I'm joined here today by Julian Joachim. How are we going, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Yourself, man?
Yeah, not too bad. Pretty good, thank you. Firstly, thank you for taking the time to come and join me on the cast today. How's training and gaming been treating you recently?
Yeah, not too bad. Quite busy, just mainly with training, and then obviously trying to find some time to get that extra practice in on League and StarCraft. But yeah, overall not too bad.
Yeah, great to hear, mate. Let's just go ahead and kick it off with a little bit of background history into, what sorts of games you got into and the sorts of games that allowed you to become such a mechanical beast that you are, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. So I believe I started around 2011 or 2012. Kind of started the old classic, a little bit of COD 4, muck around with some of the boys, go and shoot each other, all that good stuff.
Yep.
Kind of played a couple competitions here and there, but nothing super serious. That was more just kind of how I eased into it. And then from there, got involved with a bit more strategy games such as League and StarCraft. And from there, both played those kind of not super professionally or anything, but just kind of here and there when I could. And I would say probably around 2015 or 2016 is more so when I started to really get into it and really apply myself. And then, from there, the ranks just kind of started to climb, I suppose.
Yeah, much like myself, starting back in that COD 4 Pro Mod days, trying to find some scrims here and there on the good old Cybergamer. But we also have a little bit of background history together as well in regards to our StarCraft days, really like 2 years ago now, when I was climbing in High Masters and you were GM, I believe. And we actually found each other. And afterwards, we started duoing together for quite a bit. And that's when we started to, focus on more of that grind. And that's when I really started to learn, much more in depth about macro and micro cycles in StarCraft. So this episode is predominantly going to be talking about exercise and the impact that exercise has on our behavior in regards to gaming. Now, what I mean by that is, for example, I did Taekwondo when I was a bit younger, and Julian did karate and continued on with it to a national level. And we're going to be talking about some of those kind of effects that we learned in those particular sports that allowed us to have that kind of, transition into gaming. So in regards to recent times, Julian, what kind of activity have you been up to?
At the moment, I'm mainly training some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and kickboxing, but that's more so a recent kind of development. So I actually stopped training in karate about 2 years ago. However, trained in karate for 9 years, made it all the way up to black belt, and actually competed at a pretty high level. We basically, part of my team, me and a couple other members made it actually onto the national team. So went and competed at nationals in Australia, and actually ended up coming, I believe my best was 3rd or 4th in 2 separate age divisions. From there, basically they take the top 5 best people from each country, and then that makes up the World Cup team. And then obviously you can only really get invited to go to that. So yeah, basically they just take the top five best competitors from each country, and then those are invited to go and compete on the World Cup stage, which I was. However, basically it was more just a very busy time, and it does take quite a lot of obviously additional training and flights, accommodation, just time there to get yourself acclimatized, all that kind of thing. So I didn't actually end up going, but it was quite nice just to even compete at that high national level, and then still have that opportunity to go to the World Cup if I did want.
Yeah, I can really relate to you on that, especially in regards to myself doing Taekwondo. I had the opportunity to go to Korea and do some tournaments over there, but it was just one of those things that was, sort of approaching a really important time of study at school. And I would have had to, obviously sacrifice that school to go over there. And at the time, it was something that really seemed really awesome, but I don't think I really had that passion for, sparring and all those kind of things. And that's kind of where I started to slowly ride the slope of detraining. But I mean, there was the opportunity was there. It was just one I didn't really grasp. So, in regards to yourself reaching that high Grandmaster level in StarCraft 2, which requires an absolute divine mechanical, skill set essentially, and performing super well in solo queue in League of Legends, what I want to chat about today is, that kind of translation that had from, your physical activity, performing at the nationals in karate and all those other type of, sports you've been participating in. What kind of effects did that have on your gaming performance? And did you learn anything that can kind of, you can take from your experience at nationals that allowed you to kind of like translate that to a gaming scenario?
Yeah, I would definitely say that there are a lot of skills and kind of traits or qualities, if you will, that can basically interchange between the two. Probably one of the first ones, obviously, just get it out the way, is like your body needs exercise to kind of be healthy. I mean, if you're just literally sitting there smashing out 18-hour days, like behind the computer, eating like rubbish, like obviously your body's not going to be healthy. It's not going to be performing as well as it could. Like your body, your brain, everything's
Yeah,
not
for
quite
sure.
going to be there. Um, Apart from the obviously physical benefits, though, I would say majority of the positive consequences would probably be mental. That
Hmm.
would mainly be because I would say because there is a lot of skills that you learn that can kind of be interchanged between the two disciplines. First one would probably be things such as obviously increases like your reaction times, especially when you're sparring with someone. They try and
Hmm.
punch you, you need to like react quicker. Exact same thing with team fights or in StarCraft, like getting that micro up. Um, I would say that's definitely one of the big pluses. Other ones would be dealing with fear and anxiety. You're going to perform different when you realize that there's quite a lot on the line, as opposed to when you're just like playing a casual scrim or playing like a little competition or something like that. There's just that much more added pressure, and then it is going to affect how you perform and how you play. Part of what you learn to do, especially at like national level, is control that fear and kind of use it to help you and think with a cool head.
Yeah, I can definitely say that, especially when, you look at StarCraft, for example. StarCraft's a game that's based on a 1v1 scenario, right? It's you versus the opponent, and you both start off at the exact same point of time on an equal playing field. And what's interesting is, you can think of, a 1v1 situation in regards to martial arts as well, right? It's you versus the opponent. Your moves matter versus the opponent's moves, and you kind of play and feed off each other essentially. In StarCraft, it's a very reactive game, as you said, having the ability to be reactive under many different scenarios, having that insight, whether you're scouting an opponent's base, seeing what they're building, and being able to on the fly react to what they're doing. So that's really interesting because it's the same thing in regards to sparring as well. You might be versing an opponent and they might go for a kick, and you might, be able to react and say, okay, well, they're going for a kick. I can, go in for, a jab or whatever it may be. So when you were training and sparring with people, did you ever have that like anxiety before a fight? The opponent was bigger, stronger, faster. I know I definitely had that in Taekwondo. Did you ever have those kind of feelings? Well, they're a lot stronger. I don't really have a chance, or was it just more so, yeah, I can take him?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We actually see that quite a lot of the time. One of the things that my instructor used to say is don't look at the other person's belt when you're competing, because it's more typical with lower grades and like kids and stuff. But they'll go into competition, say they're like a white belt or something, and they see that the guy they're versing is yellow belt, and they're immediately like, oh no, he's higher, like he must be better, I'm going to lose, kind of thing. And they already put themselves at like a disadvantage. Like obviously we are guilty of it to some degree, myself included actually. I think one of the first times that I competed at nationals, I was in the under 16s division, and then my opponent walked onto the mat and it's under 16s, and this guy had a full beard and everything, and I was like, oh my goodness, is he on the juice? Like what is going on here? And yeah, that definitely did. I was like, oh, okay, like we really need to be on point here, because you see it all the time. It just comes down to nerves do play quite a big part. You see it quite often. Better fighters do end up losing just because of nerves. They're not willing to take those risks sometimes, and then overall it just kind of affects their performance.
Yeah, I really like that belt analogy. You know what you just said with the don't look at the belt. Don't focus on the belt, because ultimately, rank doesn't always dictate performance. And I think that's really true, especially if you refer to StarCraft or even any other game in general. There's always other ways that you can get a higher rank, whether that be boosted or whether that be, playing in a team match or, wherever it may be. There's always that kind of, feeling prior to a game. And I know it's a widespread concern and problem actually within the StarCraft community. The fact that, there's this whole idea around ladder anxiety. And it's that pre-built cognitive stress prior to hitting that play button, because you're so concerned that your opponent's going to be, a lot stronger than you. And, you might be on a win streak, or you might be just prior to ranking up, and you don't want to face that stronger opponent. But ultimately, end of the day, you have to kind of mold yourself into just hitting that play button and overcoming that anxiety. And that's, something I didn't do. I stopped playing because that anxiety got too much for me. If I'm being brutally honest, it was something that was really hard to overcome. And I even just hovering over the play button in StarCraft, I got sweaty palms, and I just didn't want to visualize, queuing into that menu screen, the loading screen, and seeing that the opponent was a higher rank. And that was what really kind of ruined the game for me. So kind of threading and looping that needle back towards, that whole sports kind of options. There's definitely a few more teams that are starting to, pick up this whole practice of actually having like group training sessions. Do you really think that, a lot of teams should be starting to focus on, having a group exercise program that can help better their athletes?
Yeah, 100%. I think so. I think it's just, there's been numerous studies that show even not particularly strenuous exercise, even just jogging, the numerous benefits that it has for your cardiovascular system, for your lung capacity, for just everything, honestly. I think especially if you're putting in those really long hours, you're putting quite a lot of stress on your body. And there's just so many things that exercise gives you that kind of help your body to rebuild and just kind of cope with all those stresses and stuff a bit better. Obviously, typically when not all the time, but a large portion of the time when you're exercising, you'll be getting some form of like sunlight, even if it's just when you're kind of going to, say, the gym or wherever, or if you're training outside or whatever the case may be. And even sunlight has been shown to, numerous studies on it, how it affects serotonin levels, how it affects just like overall. Yeah, there's numerous papers written on it. But yeah, I would say so. And just in terms of the mental benefits as well, depends if you have like, say, a coach or a trainer or whatever. One of the most rewarding things for me personally was when my instructor would keep pushing me like past the point that I thought like, okay, this is done. This is as far as I can go. Like,
yeah,
cut to my head, you couldn't go anymore. And then you go and do like another like 100 punches or whatever it was. And you're just like, wow, okay, like I really didn't think I could do that. And then it just kind of escalates that, I would say. And yeah, it just gives you a much better kind of well-rounded picture of yourself and what your body's actually capable of versus what you think. Like there's I think David Goggins actually talks about in his books, most of the time when you think you're done, you only like you're only tapping into like 40%. So there's still like you still got more than half, which I think is like fairly true.
Yep.
When I was training for the World Cup, obviously I was like, for nationals actually. I was like insanely fit. Like I think I ended up doing the Kokoda challenge in like 3 weeks notice, just because like, why not? Yeah, literally, man. And then that was obviously something else as well. And then I think I got maybe halfway through there and I was like, oh, maybe this is like a bit more than I can chew away. Maybe it's not the whole, just 3 weeks training. Should probably train a bit more, But
yeah, maybe you should have prepped a little bit better, but
yeah, definitely. And it was just that was kind of at the back of my mind. I was like, okay, it kind of feels like I'm at the limit here, but I know that there's just so much more. And especially when you kind of like have someone else to push you past that point, you really see like there's quite a lot more. You're like capable of a lot more than you really think you are.
Yeah, for sure, mate. You'll catch me outside doing the Kokoda Trail. Yeah, that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. And, just kind of touching on what we said before about making sure that your body's, all, keeping up to date with everything. We update our PCs, but we update our body. We can look to an external case, for example, Uzi from RNG, all massive props to him, an absolutely amazing ADC that dominated the scene in League of Legends for quite a long time. However, when he went to the hospital for a checkup, the doctor actually said that he had, the arms of a 40 to 50-year-old, only being 23 at the time. So I think that really stresses the importance of being mindful in regards to, how long we are sitting, how long we are practicing, and that ability that we have to recognize, we can change it up a bit. We can split it up a bit. We can, go for a walk for half an hour or go for a jog for, however long, do a little bit of exercise in between these little practice sessions just to kind of, get that regenerative boost, I guess.
Yeah. Something I also just like to add there as well. I think that's kind of one of the other potential benefits of exercising and stuff as well. If you're basically doing, say, like 16-hour like scrim sessions or whatever a day, that's quite a lot of stress on your ligaments and your, not so much the muscles themselves, but like the
for sure,
tissue and all that kind of thing. And if your body's really not equipped to that, it just places a ridiculous amount of strain. Whereas even say doing something like push-ups, for example, it's been shown to strengthen, say, like the tendons and ligaments in your shoulders, for just as an example. Or like there's numerous other things where you can kind of strengthen and build up other parts of your body, so then it will just be better equipped to deal with things like that, or better equipped to deal with like potential overuse.
Yeah, I definitely, when you talk about overuse, I think a lot of what, physios might see these days are, ergonomic problems regarding, back posture. And, a lot of people tend to slant over, get closer to the monitor and stuff like that. But also in regards to kind of wrist problems, I'd imagine, just that overuse, especially even just typing at the keyboard, flick of the wrist, what they say. It's just that constant overuse. And especially if you're doing it for, 5, 6, 7 hours at a time, it really builds up that pressure as well. And, referring back to the article prior about Uzi from RNG, he quoted that, sitting down for so long, the lower part of my body feels like it's not mine and I often have no strength. I think that a lot of gamers these days do have a problem with sitting down for long periods of time and not getting up and walking around. And that's why we see, those type of cases with blood clots. And, that's just genuinely just that problem with venous pooling. Just building up that, blood at our feet and, not getting that movement throughout our legs, which can really cause a problem, especially in terms of also strength-wise, just sitting down for so long.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely important especially when you gaming, because obviously you're sitting in a chair, you're not particularly active, especially with the lower part of your body. And if you really aren't doing any sort of exercise, whatever, the muscle just atrophies so quickly. And then just you end up with a bunch of different like pains, because I'm pretty sure a large part of musculoskeletal pain and injuries actually come from muscle imbalances.
Oh, really? Yeah, no, I wasn't really aware of that. And I guess, you can kind of make that connection between, I guess, caring for our bodies and caring for our health in comparison to how much time and effort we spend in game. And what I mean by that, in kind of more simpler terms is, we look to traditional sports and athletes are actively working on kicking better, scoring better, running better. But in terms of gamers, we're actively working our aim. We're actively working on our builds, our ability to have reaction in the game. But that isn't contributing to our health more so. The more time spent on working on our craft in a game, the less time spent working on our body. Whereas, a traditional athlete is actively working on their speed, agility, strength, stamina. They're all actively working on it. So I think a lot of people should start to recognize, how long ultimately we are spending in game doing practice, especially at the elite level. And, as we said before, starting to incorporate those breaks. Now, kind of just touching on the importance of movement for, gamers, there was actually a study done called Do E-Athletes Move? And essentially, there was initially a requirement for, participants and responders to, either be in League of Legends Diamond 3 or higher, StarCraft players, a Grandmaster or Master, and CSGO to be within the top 3 ranks. However, they actually dropped that and included people who had the desire to become an esports athlete just because they had a hard time reaching out to people. So they actually ultimately got 115 responses, which was really interesting because it was basically a subjective questionnaire. And it included, generalized questions such as, yearly esports income, main esport, reason for physically training, and, what kind of impact that has on them, and that kind of belief what has on them. It also included, their overall training per day, the influence of whether physical training has an impact on their esports, and where that physical appearance as a result of physically training can impact their performance essentially. And the main takeaways are 88.7% actually do perform exercise, with 81.7% having a scheduled program. So there is that kind of awareness to the importance of exercise. And I really think that the media does portray gamers as being lazy, not really exercising, but I really do think that there is an importance for research to see how active gamers are, because it's one of those problems that, if it wants to be an elite sport, if it wants to compete in the Olympics or wherever it wants to do, there is an overall health, I think, requirement for people to be healthy.
Yeah, that's fair. Just out of curiosity, what did they actually classify as physical activity in that study? Is that just walking or like weightlifting or?
Yeah, so what's really interesting is they didn't actually have a specific, classification of what physical activity training they were doing. So I think it is a little bit weird, and they only really had what overall amount of duration they were doing per day. They divided into 4 different categories, whether it was 0 to 1 hours, or 1 to 1.5, or 1.5 to 2, or 2 and above. That was only what they classified in, and they averaged out that an average person does like 1 hour of exercise per day. So that they justified it as meeting the World Health Organization recommendations. But I really think it is a little bit strange they didn't actually classify what exercise they were doing. And one other really thing I found interesting was, out of the 115 responders, there was only 3 people that were female, and the rest obviously being 112 male. So whether that dictates, gaming is a male-dominated field, or whether there just wasn't enough responders that were female, I think there is a lot of research that can be done from a female point of view, and the impact that gaming has on their health as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's quite a lot of sausage.
Yeah. So in regards to reluctance, I know that there is a lot of people who, before, going to training, like to, motivate themselves, have that kind of external variable that, whether it be watching a video of, if you're about to go do some deadlifts, watching some, powerlifting, or whether you're about to queue into a CSGO game, you watch Shroud, click off, pop some heads. There's that external kind of motivational thing to kind of overcome that reluctance to training. So, prior to doing your karate competitions at nationals, for example, did you ever have that reluctance, or, reluctance to train?
In terms of reluctance, I wouldn't really say that was too present on competition day. I'd probably say that was more present kind of during the training, because that's more when things can kind of get a bit not mundane, but a bit repetitive, I suppose. Because kind of rocking up to the same place, training for the same times, basically. And then I think some people do kind of fall into that trap, which is myself included. On the actual more so competition day, motivation wasn't really a problem because you've done all this training, like it's led up to this point, like you're kind of just ready to, like obviously quite nervous, but you're kind of just ready to go out there and perform. In terms of motivation, I think everyone does it like a little bit differently. So most of what myself and some of the other people that I trained with would do would be to just chuck on a set of headphones while we're on the way to the venue or the like stadium or whatever where we're competing, and yeah, just put on some headphones. Just, for me, it was mostly like heavy metal. Kind of just get into that like that mindset, like you're ready to go, you're ready to get in there, just do like get some work done, basically. That was a very popular one. Some of what my other teammates did was actually, yeah, like you mentioned, watch like other fights, like people who are the best in the world, and then kind of take a little bit of motivation from that. Like you've just seen that, and now you're ready to be like, okay, cool, I'm going to go out and maybe not imitate that exactly, but kind of put my own little twist on it and try and like up my game so it's a little bit closer to that type of level.
Yeah, I love that, especially, the fact that it's an individualized approach. You look at other sports, the three big titans, soccer, AFL, and rugby. It's a team game, and there's so much team dynamic and culture that goes into a game. Prior to it, you have that locker room warm up, that whole big kind of inspirational spur on because you're about to essentially play alongside each other. But in a karate fight and taekwondo fight, for that instance, it's one on one, and it's all the pressure's on you, and it's your ability to perform. So in regards to kind of habitual formation, I guess, did you ever have kind of the same kind of habit you used to go into before a fight, or did you like to sometimes switch it up?
I would say a large portion of it was kind of the same. Only major things I would really change is you obviously do a little bit of couple like drills and a little bit of light sparring just to kind of warm your body up before. The only thing we would really change is sometimes like kind of other fighters in the division and like what kind of style they have. So you would kind of tailor some of your drills to, say for example, one of the other competitors in my division really likes head kicks, so I would kind of work in
Mm-hmm.
slightly more blocking to the head as part of like my drills pre-fight or something along those lines. Something that I would like to add in as well is I wish I did a bit more visualization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because yeah, because especially now I've read quite a lot of studies and especially books. Michael Phelps is actually pretty big on this, visualizing exactly what you want to do before you kind of do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's a huge advocate of this. I think I can't remember where I read this exactly, but literally every single morning on race day, he's visualized exactly what he's going to do before he does it, from down to
Mm-hmm.
breakfast, to the car ride, to the warm-up laps, to the actual race itself, obviously, to what he's going to do afterwards. Like everything's already in his mind and fully prepared. And that's I think they've done a bunch of studies on that now that shows positive correlation between top performers and actually visualizing. So that's something, unfortunately, that I didn't do, but I definitely wish I did. Maybe that's why I didn't end up getting first in Australia, but hey.
Yeah, I mean, whatever, there's so many different things that we can use and kind of help to increase our performance, especially once the performance is done. That's when we can realize, oh, I wish I used this or that. But I really like that insight into imagery. I'm not a psychologist myself, or don't quote myself to be. However, during one of my sports psychology classes, we kind of went in depth in regards to imagery in the sense of it being motor and sensory. Whether that motor being, like the psychomotor muscular theory, um, in regards to stimulating our muscles. So that might be prior to a kick, we imagine stimulating our quadriceps, or prior to a punch, we imagine our deltoids and our triceps and our biceps extending, going in for that punch. Or in the opposite, being more sensory, as you said, making that visualization as realistic as possible, including sound and sight and smell. And that allows us to create that mental rehearsal. For example, in a karate or taekwondo game, the feeling of the pads, the smell might be sweat, the sound of the crowd or people in the crowd, the sound of jumping up and down on the pads. So many different realistic visualizations that we can use to ultimately enhance our performance, which is, something I'm really interested in, and, something I think that a lot of people should be doing, because I think there is definitely, good research there that suggests that, as you said, there is an increased performance, when we do it. And just kind of going into our last little segment here in regards to opportunity. Obviously in martial arts, there's so many different opportunities that we can take, that we can restrict ourselves from taking. And that kind of has that kind of translation into, whether it be League or StarCraft, the opportunity to either push a lane, to do whatever action. What kind of, lessons did you learn from karate and, performing at that professional level that you could use to translate between, karate and between gaming, whether that be, I'm going to restrict myself from taking a kick now because there'll be a better opportunity to do it in the next 30 seconds. This is not a good time. But just be patient. Where did that patience kind of play in?
I would say probably the best two things for that would be patience and the ability to think rationally given the situation. Obviously, playing in front of a big crowd or competing in an arena or something like that does kind of mess with that a little bit, because you're in your head a little bit more. You're like, oh, what happens if this doesn't work? Then I get hit with this, and then you just be that much more mad at yourself afterwards. But I would say, yeah, just having that ability to kind of manage those nerves so you can still think rationally and then evaluate each situation as it comes up and actually decide, is this the best thing to go for in the moment, or should I try and wait for something else, which is where that patience would come in. Sometimes the first opportunity that presents itself isn't always the best, but if you're just kind of jumping on every opportunity that you can, you wouldn't really know that. So yeah, I think patience and just the ability to kind of keep a cool head and analyze each situation critically and see what the best course of action would be.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The rationalization of our actions, and, being able to justify what we're doing, and, how that can ultimately lead to a better or worse performance down the road. So ultimately, thanks for coming on today, mate. I really enjoyed, getting your insight and opinion on some of the importance of, combining, physical activity and gaming in respect. We touched on quite a few topics, opportunity, fatigue, that cognitive focus, dealing with your emotions. And it's really interesting to hear that from that national karate level.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for having me. It was honestly really good to come on here and share some of my thoughts and honestly gain some different perspectives that you brought up. And then I think it's very important to always be trying to improve yourself and kind of get different other people's perspectives, so then you can kind of build your own better, more well-rounded kind of image of how things actually are, I would say.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Once again, thank you for coming on, mate.
So thanks very much.
And thank you very much to all the listeners out there. We have just reached the over half an hour point. So thank you very much for listening to episode 2 of Mindclickers. Unfortunately, Julian's not that active on some of the socials, so he opted not to really provide them, which is perfectly fine. And, in the upcoming episodes 3, 4, and 5, we do have some really exciting and high-performing guests. So that'll be really good insight into what they do, but I'll keep that a secret for now. But in order to get a sneak peek, make sure you're following us on Facebook and Instagram at Mindclickers. Our Twitter page will be live when you are hearing this as well, so make sure to head on over to Twitter and give us a follow on there. Thank you very much for listening once again. This has been your host, Lachlan Parker, and I am tuning out. See you in the next one.